Morning, everybody. So good to be here, as always. But it's great to have you here as well, because it wouldn't be the same if you weren't. So thank you. I do want to start off kind of where we were at our meditation today. Happy Earth Day. Tomorrow is Earth Day, so whoop, whoop, whoop. Just inviting us to have a little love and good thoughts. However you like to celebrate Earth Day, may it be a blessed day for you. And everybody, everything can always use more love and attention. So this week, giant gentleness, taking it to the streets. So this is how we take giant gentleness out into the world at large. And I want to start off with, it's going to be a story. I had the idea of this, what I thought was a spiritual law that I was going to share with everybody, which I'll get to that in a moment, but the story will help set it up a little bit. So the story is this. Back in 2013, my family and I, we had just moved to Cleveland, and my wife's uncle lived about 45 minutes south of us, and he was up visiting. He and I and the dogs were out walking in the neighborhood. We're a couple blocks away from our house, and I see Uncle Rob reach over and pick up a piece of garbage. And it was like some sort of like a food wrapper or something, looked a little gross. But I just watched him and picked it up, and I didn't say anything. And we kept going about our way. We get back to our house, and I watch. He goes into the house, he throws it away, and washes his hands. And that was it. And I was like, I never would have thought of that. Like the old me, the habitual me would have, walked along and said, whoever lives here should clean up the garbage in their yard, and just kept walking right on by. But I watched him do that, and I saw how easy, simple it was. Even if it's something that maybe you didn't want to touch. I was just like, wow. And so that day, Uncle Rob picked up one piece of garbage, but it individually inspired me to pick up, since that time, probably a few hundred pieces of garbage. So that one small act had a bigger effect. And it doesn't end there, because as I've done that, after seeing him do that, I've been in public where a couple times I've noticed somebody, after I do that, kind of look at me and be like, And I see like that same kind of dawning, like, I could do that. And it's such a small thing, but it literally makes the world a better place, like right before your eyes. When you're walking along and I see that, it's like, somebody should clean that up. But when you do, and then you look like, wow, that looks a lot better. So like visibly making the world a better place, that's simple. And so I'm confident that at least a couple people have also taken inspiration from myself. So Rob inspired maybe thousands of pieces of litter to be picked up. And then I also think about who inspired Uncle Rob. So this is what I was going to coin, I thought, the term of the law of contagion. That was contagious. Turns out there actually is an old belief called the law of contagion. It's somewhat related, but not quite the same. This is kind of more the ripple effects. I'm calling it the law of contagion 2.0. And to me, it just illustrates how much power we actually have when we feel maybe helpless sometimes out in the world. What can we do? And so this week, we're continuing our discussion of giant gentleness and how we talk about this shift in consciousness of humanity, how we are creating a new earth, a new way of being that welcomes, recognizes everybody, meets the needs of everybody. We'll hear this term over and over in Centers for Spiritual Living. We're creating a world that works for everyone, and we mean everyone. And so the idea of gentle giantness, again, I talked about it a couple weeks ago. Gentleness is not weakness. It's not letting somebody walk all over you. It's actually the opposite. It takes courage to stand up in a way that's opposite of how we've been conditioned to act. We human beings, we've been around a long time, and for the most part this entire time, it's been an eye for an eye, fight fire with fire, and seen as weakness if you don't show up in that way. But it's easy to show up in that way. It's easy to react and just get right back into it, but that doesn't change anything, and it just keeps this cycle going. And we've seen some, avatars along the way, like the Gandhi, who, talked about peaceful resistance, who inspired Martin Luther King Jr., who talked about peaceful resistance. That's the only way that we actually see change happening. So this week, taking it to the streets, we're looking at how it applies in like our politics, social justice area, how it applies in our social media, and how it applies in our communities within our communities. So when it comes to politics, yeah, that's a tough one. Ernest Holmes actually kind of gives us a little bit of a glimpse of what we've got to think about. And it comes from where Jesus told the story, and it was, if you bring gifts to the altar, but you have hate in your heart, or you have angst with your brother, leave the gifts for right now. Go fix this with your brother, and then come back and offer your gifts. So Ernest Holmes, in response to that, he says, because we cannot enter into peace while we are in a state of confusion. It cannot be done. We cannot manifest love when we have a mental equivalent of hate in our hearts and minds. So when it comes to politics, we have our opinions. I have my opinions, Lord knows. I do my best to not bring them in here too much, because when I first started right before I found Centers for Spiritual Living, we wanted to find a place to go and explore our spirituality, and I tried one church. And the spiritual message was wonderful. It's like, I can get behind this. This resonates with my view of the world, of reality. And then another pastor came out and gave the second message, and he began by saying, if you saw what happened in the Supreme Court last week, whether you did or not, I'm telling you, you need to be angry. And I agreed with what he was saying. I did see what had happened. This is back in like 2009. I don't even remember what it was now, but I did see what he was talking about, and I was angry. But I didn't want to come in on a Sunday to explore my spirituality to feel angry. And I don't want that to happen here. And so I do my best to keep my opinions to myself from the pulpit. I'm always happy to talk about them on the side. But the idea is we have our opinions and we have our beliefs. I think genuinely, deep down, we all want the same thing, but we've got vastly different ideas of how to get it. But we get tied up in the ideas, the opinions, and then we hold the people that have the opinions that are different than ours in a less than human sense. We see it, we even hear people saying it in the news, where they'll call people on the opposing sides evil. They're evil, they're demons, they're all kinds of stuff that they all want to, when we generalize for a whole group of people, they all want to just kill all these people. They all want to just ruin this. All these different things that come up. But like the song said earlier, I love the music. Yes, Valerie was absolutely right. The music was perfect today. Because we see the differences, but how do we look past the differences to see the things that we have in common? And that's really hard to do when it comes to politics. And so that's kind of our task in Gentle Giantness, is to see, like, we can have our beliefs, we can be activists, we can do the steps that we feel we can, but let's hold everybody as human being first and foremost. And that's a shift in just our way of how we carry ourselves forward. And one other thing, I have one more quote about this that really resonates with me, because I talked a couple weeks ago about how we're not heads of state, most of us, at least not in here. We might not be state legislators or in positions of power to where we can really directly affect change. But like myself, I can read what's in the news, I can read what's on Facebook or Twitter and get myself kind of activated about something that I'm not doing anything about. If I'm not like sending an email or making a phone call to my state representative or something like that, why am I getting all worked up on it? And this is a quote from, I'm not sure, Ivan Nuru, who says, if it's out of your hands, it deserves freedom from your mind too. Yeah. And thank you. That's how I felt when I came across this one, because it's my reminder. Because how can we sit and be keyboard warriors and we get caught up in what it is, and we just keep ourselves in a constricted state of fear, worry, angst, anger.
Disrupts your peace, it's too expensive.
Yes. Cassie says if it disrupts your peace, it's too expensive. Absolutely. Let that go the best that we can. And so that's around kind of how it goes into politics. And I kind of alluded to like sitting behind on your keyboard warrior. So the next area for gentle giantness to give it an approach is in social media. So back in 2017, it blew me away when I saw this story. And it was a comedian and a writer named Sarah Silverman. Very opinionated, very funny person, but very opinionated. And put some opinions out there and then got the response that you would expect from some people. And somebody called her something really nasty. And, our training, our conditioning says fight back, fire with fire, and you're going to type angry, and you're going to send that off, and you're going to do whatever, demean that person or whatever. But she paused. She's like, wait a minute, let's look. And then went and looked at that person's page and saw what they were going through. And like, oh my gosh, they've got like 4 slipped discs. They're in a lot of pain. They don't have health insurance. They don't have money to go see anybody. And then dug a little deeper and like, oh my gosh, and this person was abused as a child. And so instead of responding in the way that our instincts or reactions tell us to, she just responded and said, hey, I looked at you at your page and you're in a lot of pain. I'd be angry too. And then said, to the greater community, what can we do to help this person out? Does anybody live in this, I believe it was like Texas, does anybody live in this area of Texas who might know a back doctor, or maybe you are? How can we get this person in there? And let's get some money raised to help this person do it. And then apparently, behind the scenes, even paid for this person's medical expenses. But just by reaching out in that way, that person said, wow, I'm sorry that I responded that way, and you've changed my mind. And also, you reminded me, I used to be somebody that liked to help people. I used to do that, and I had forgotten. So this person went from vilifying her to like, thank you, you brought me back into who I am. And in that kind of contagion idea, a couple years later, Patton Oswalt, another opinionated comedian, same thing. He had a very similar experience, went and looked at the person's page and said, wow, this person's hurting. And then supported their fundraiser, and that person that was trying to raise $5,000 for something ended up getting $13,500 with the $2,000 that Patton donated to start it. And all that angry typing that we do, it doesn't change anyone, and it actually kind of strengthens it, and it feeds that energy of eye for an eye. But these 2 different ways, or the one way by 2 different people in contagion, actually caused shift. And that's powerful. So again, gentleness is not weakness. It takes strength and courage to stand out of the norm. Because I know a lot of people would be like, how can you be nice to that person? This is what they said. But that's the way that we create shift on this planet. So then the third thing that we come up with is just holding that space. So there's one last quote I want to share from Ernest Holmes. And it's again to that idea of we got to see past our differences and recognize that whatever's within us, that gentle giantness within, which I call spirit or God, is that presence that makes us who we are, seeing through to that, and that's our power for shifting the consciousness. So Ernest Holmes, in the book What Religious Science Teaches, says, if we would look for a God of love, we must look long and deeply into each other. We must look away from the differences until we penetrate into the unity of the whole. Love alone reveals love. Hate but hides the gleam. Ernest Holmes, he knew what he was talking about. But there's power there, like immense power, and that's the only way that we can start to shift what it is that we want to see in this world and be. So something else that just by happenstance came across my awareness a couple weeks ago, it was somebody had written an article about if you're feeling helpless during these times. We're in this election year, so we're going to start to see the vitriol accelerate. We're going to start to see the name calling and the doom saying, and this is whatever. Stop there. But when you're feeling helpless, this person says, find something in community that you can do, and find it at the level that you're able to. So maybe if you are friends with somebody in the state legislature, you can get a hold of them. And how can I organize? How can I inspire to create some shift? How do we, what do we do? But for most people, for myself, I don't know anybody like that. So maybe it's city council. Do I know somebody in the city council? Or, no, maybe it's in my HOA in my neighborhood. Maybe how can we organize a meeting where we come together and discuss issues that are local to us and just allow people to be heard and to explore other ideas? Or maybe it's let's organize a cleanup in our neighborhood. We'll go out and just clean things up together and visibly make the world a better place that way. That there's little things. And it went further down, like maybe the best that you're able to do at your level of where you're at is within your own household. So how can you even just create with your loved ones an opportunity to, hey, let's get together. What can we go do to make the world a better place? And what can we talk about to lift each other up, to recognize what's good about you, what's good about you, what's good about you, have that conversation and just shift our awareness, knowing that those little things ripple out, that we have so much more power than we can imagine. So with that, we will have one last kind of story to go to, but before, I want to go over our spiritual principle. So I'm calling it the Law of Contagion 2.0, and it's just that actions and ideas spread like wildfire when they find resonance with individuals. So when you are in that place and you are inspired to take action, do it. And one thing about the Law of Contagion is I've seen it go both ways, because at times in my life, I've been to where I wasn't prayed up. I wasn't in my meditative practice. I was in maybe a funk, a bit of a depressed state, to where I've seen somebody else do something that was maybe not for their best, not for their well-being, and it resonated with me. I'm like, I could do that too. And I took myself down a downward spiral. This is right before, well, I guess it was about 20 years ago. But I've seen how that law of contagion can go both ways. And so I think a part of the awareness is just knowing where you are mentally and trying to keep yourself subdued when you know you're not in the most healthy place, and look for inspiration. And when you are in that healthy place, get out there and take action in the community, because you never know who it's going to influence. And then our spiritual practice is just setting that intention to let the gentle giant within be your leading presence. So you're making a conscious choice to pause and assess and move forward with giant gentleness as our leading personality. Like that's what Sarah Silverman did when she's like, wanted to respond, but she paused. And she said, and opened up to something bigger, and then saw like, wow, I'd feel like kind of a jerk if I attacked this person who's really suffering, even though they attacked me. But I don't have to do that, because I'm my gentle giant, and I can stand in who I am and not let somebody else have power over me to make me react in a certain way. I can be that, and then choose a conscious way of moving forward. So our affirmation is, I boldly choose to respond in kind ways that represent spirit in action. It takes courage. So if you're with me on this, will you join me in reading this affirmation as we say, I boldly choose to respond in kind ways that represent spirit in action. And through that's how we start to really create that shift on this planet that we have. So what I wanted to finish with on this idea of the law of contagion is, I'm guessing most people have heard of this, but maybe not. It's the 6 degrees of separation of Kevin Bacon. That if you trace any one person, it started as a game, like you could trace one actor, and within 6 different people, trace it back to Kevin Bacon. But the concept is, and this is in real life, that mathematically and statistically, you are never more than 6 people separated from anybody in the world. So anyone, Joe Biden, Netanyahu, Donald Trump, it doesn't matter who, you are 6 degrees or less from anybody. Kevin Bacon, I'm about 3 degrees away. So I just want you to take a second to just visualize this. Imagine, that you're at work or maybe at a store and somebody is having a really tough moment, and they are in their space where they are showing up very poorly, and then maybe they're attacking somebody, and your instinct is to run in and attack back. But then you pause and you assess and you say, how can I bring gentleness to this situation? How can I find out what this person needs and help them instead of just attacking them, sending them on their way, and creating more of that angst in the world? And now imagine this, that somebody that's there is a witness to it. Kind of like me when I watched Uncle Rob pick up the garbage. Somebody witnessed it and was inspired. And then they talk to somebody on their way home. They stop to have drinks with friends, and they tell somebody who then says, wow, that was pretty cool how that person handled that. And they tell their spouse, and their spouse happens to be friends with a staffer for so-and-so on Capitol Hill. And you never know that that one little thing can reach anybody and cause shift and change and to inspire. And so we all have more power than we could ever imagine. And it begins by recognizing that gentle giant within and saying, I'm not going to let the world out there shake me, because I'm going to pay attention to what's in here that is me, that forms me, that gives me breath, that gives me the strength, and carry on. So let's be that gentle giant, and let's anchor that in by going within and just imagining a world that works for everyone. Imagine having the strength and courage of the infinite, that gentle giant, the mountain within, with absolute resolve to know that when we need strength, when we need courage, when we need the ability to rise above our knee-jerk reactions and be kindness, that presence is there for us. So I just acknowledge that that's it. There's only one infinite life, one source of all, one consciousness, one mind, and that each and every individual walking this planet is an extension of that one mind. And so while we recognize all the different opinions and ways that people might have to create the world that they see that would work for everyone, we may disagree on how to get there. But we all come from that same source. So that life force of love with a capital L is the very energy that breathes us, that grows our bodies, that moves the planets. And that same life force is in every single cell, atom, subatomic particle of each individual. And it's all the one thinking mind of the universe. So as we tap into that, may we find the inspiration, and may we be the inspiration. May each and every individual who hears this know that you are bathed in love with a capital L, that this consciousness pervades and persists, and that it is ours to use when we draw upon it. So in gratitude for that life source, knowing that each and every person is always surrounded and carried by that light, I say thank you. In gratitude for the creative mechanism of the universe, the creative mind that we are all part of, that we all use, I say thank you. And to every individual who has set the intention to make the world a better place, one thought at a time, one action at a time, I say thank you. And for the presence and love that is felt all around, I say thank you. So I affirm right here and right now that love and light of the infinite is what each of us are. And as we go forward throughout this week, shift occurs all around us in bigger and better ways. And may we find the peace that is the mountain, the gentle giantness within. So with that deep gratitude for each and every person that hears these words, and for the love and law that makes it so, I release these words knowing that it's already done. And now it's our joy to simply live life and allow it to be. And I affirm it by saying, and so it is. So thank you.